Hello there, this is Sam, and I'm in Yorkshire right now, in the north of England, where it's much, much colder than in California, but it is beautiful, and the nights are very long and the days are quite short. And this is episode 20 of the VictorPrep Vocab podcast. My apologies that this episode has been a long time in coming. Perhaps it's been even 2 weeks since my last episode. That's partly because I'm on vacation or holiday back with my parents in England. I've also been a bit sick, so I was in bed for a few days. However, like I said before, I'm not stopping doing these podcasts. There is a reason if they're not coming up. So I am here, I'm making podcasts still, and let's get started and let's review the words from episode 19. Those words were bolster, plastic, luminous, and symbiosis. Bolster, that means a long, thick pillow that is often placed underneath other pillows for support. The secondary meaning is to support, strengthen, or reinforce. Plastic means looking or tasting artificial. It can also mean, when referring to a substance, something that is easily shaped or molded. Luminous means full of light. It means bright or shining, especially in the dark. Symbiosis means interaction between two different organisms or animals, and the association between these two organisms usually gives an advantage to both animals or both organisms. Now let's get started on the new words. Our first word is sublime. Sublime, that is spelled S-U-B-L-I-M-E, sub, S-U-B, lime, L-I-M-E. Sublime is an adjective, and it means lofty thought or lofty language. It can also mean beautiful or outstanding. So you could have a sublime meal. Your mother might cook you an amazing meal which could be described as sublime. Now, the word sublime is a very strong positive word. It's almost heavenly. It almost implies a highness that is above anything else. So you wouldn't just use it if you thought something was a little bit good. One uses sublime when whatever you're talking about is absolutely amazing, almost like a god did this. So you might describe the music of Mozart or Beethoven or one of these masters as being sublime. You don't describe Mozart as just being simply good or okay. It is sublime. Some synonyms of sublime are exalted, elevated, noble, lofty, majestic, magnificent, glorious, superb, marvelous, wonderful, splendid. Since the word sublime can imply that something is above everything else, you can also use it saying something like, he was sublimely stupid. That means that he is more stupid than anyone else, or absolutely stupid. So it can be used in a sort of negative way. But generally speaking, sublime is used when referring to something that is absolutely amazing or better than anything else. Our second word is pithy. Pithy, that is spelled P-I-T-H-Y, pithy. Now, pithy, this is how I want my podcasts to be, ideally. It means concise or expressive, but without using many words. To be pithy is to be able to express your meaning clearly and using as few words as possible. So, you may know people who waffle a lot, who use a lot of words, or say things like you know, or like you know this thing or the other, and use too many words or use words that don't have a meaning, they are not being pithy. To be pithy is to say exactly what you mean or what you want to say in as fewer words as possible, to be very clear. So you know now why I say I want my podcasts to be pithy. Some synonyms of pithy are succinct, terse, concise, compact, short, brief, condensed, crisp. An antonym is verbose, which means using more words than is really necessary. Our third word is apostate. Apostate. That is spelled Apostate. Apostate. An apostate, this is a noun, and an apostate is always a person, and it is a person who leaves or renounces their religion or political belief or some other principle. So, if you are very religious, and then for some reason later on you quit your religion, you leave your religion, you say, I don't want to be part of this anymore, then you are an apostate. Or if you are a liberal and you decide, I no longer want to be in this liberal party, you could be described then as an apostate. Similarly, it could just be some other principle you've believed in, like climate change, for example, and you decide you renounce that, you don't believe that anymore. You're an apostate. So, some synonyms are defector, dissenter, deserter, traitor, turncoat. An antonym would be a follower. Our fourth word is dilettante. Dilettante. That is spelled D-I-L-E, dille, tant, T-T-A-N-T-E, dilettante. So, a dilettante is a person who perhaps is interested in some art or some other area of interest, but who doesn't really commit to that art or doesn't have real knowledge. So, some synonyms are an amateur, a non-professional, a layman, a layperson. Most people will know someone who is a dilettante in some artistic endeavor. So you may know someone who's a photographer, but they don't really do it very much. They like to think they're a photographer, they take some photos and put them on Snapchat or Instagram, and they think of themselves as a photographer, but they haven't really made a true commitment. They're a bit of an amateur, they're not really that good. Often, dilettante can mean someone who copies the style of another artist. Say, someone who's a painter, and rather than commit to developing their own style, they simply make copies of another famous painter's style, for example. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong with being a dilettante. It's not necessarily a negative word. It just means you haven't fully committed to becoming a true master of an art. So, in that sense, a lot of people are dilettantes. I know I like to do some writing and write poetry sometimes, but I know that I am by no means a master of that. So perhaps I am a dilettante in that sense. Those were our 4 words for the episode. Now let's move on to our test sentences. I consider the work of Dostoevsky to be among the highest achievements in literature. His book, The Brothers Karamazov, is an inspiring work, one to which I return often because of its fantastic prose. A great politician knows that concise statements are much more powerful than long and rambling sentences. Every so often, Jessica would write some poetry, often copying the style of one of her other favourite poets. In the novel, Narcissus and Goldmund, the character Goldmund abandons his life as a monk and goes on to live a wandering life as a libertine and artist. Those were our words for today. I just want to quickly say thank you to some of the amazing people who've been emailing me with your support and kind words. So that's a shout out to Alexandra, Yang, Mohammed, and Frank. Thank you so much for emailing me. That's super nice of you. Again, my apologies for not being more frequent with updates. I am at home now in England, and I've obviously been extremely busy with my family because I don't get to see my parents very often, given that I live in California and they live in Yorkshire in England. So I've obviously been spending a lot of time with them and my sister who lives in Australia, who was here for Christmas, and my grandma who was also here for Christmas. So I've been very busy and I was also quite sick, so sorry about that. But it is good to be back and I love making the podcasts. And there are a lot more to come, including our 20 episode test, which is going to be our next episode. Please don't forget to make up your example sentences. It's really an important part of the learning process. You cannot learn by just being a passive absorber. Well, unless you're some sort of genius and you learn something as soon as you hear it. You need to take some active participation. So for each word, make sure you're doing your example sentences. Make sure you're testing yourself with those test sentences and listen to the next episode for the recap. And obviously, make sure you listen to the test episode, which is coming up next, to make sure you really test yourself actively, to make sure you understand those words. Perhaps you could also write down antonyms for each word, or synonyms, to make sure you really understand the meaning. Because if you don't know the meaning, you cannot write an antonym. How can you write an antonym of a word that you don't know the meaning of? It doesn't make any sense. So yes, don't just listen. Try and get active. Try and test yourself. Try and use these words in your day-to-day speech and impress your friends or your teachers. Because you know these words. You're learning them with me, and you should be able to use them in your day-to-day life. Because once you know them and you know the meaning, then that word is yours. It's part of you, it's part of your personality, and you can use it. And you can enjoy using some of these words because they are great. So think of all the things in life you find sublime. Try and be pithy in your writing because you'll get better grades. I don't know how to reference apostate, but think of someone who is an apostate. Everyone, you must know one person. And I'm sure all of us are dilettantes in some sort of art, so think about that too. Anyway, thank you very much. I look forward to speaking to you again. Bye-bye.